This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, and today I'm going to talk about a culture that exploits human weaknesses and limitations. The dominant culture that allows to exploit, allows and even glorifies the exploitation of human weaknesses and limitations is based on the idea that we are rational beings, therefore we can sort out when we are in situations that we are being used or abused, as if we can always know everything or can do or are in a situation where we can when we have really the freedom of choice, which is not the case, which means that this dogmatic assumption, this myth of human rationality, that is the basis for our individual pursuit of self-interest, is one of the principles that is used by the capitalist society to tell us that it is normal that we pursue our self-interest and we do not care about moral. There are legal instruments to protect us, but economics and it's not about morality, it's about profit, and therefore the market is supposed to be the highest form of fairness between humans, which is not the case. And that's why this society, based on a culture of that exploits human weaknesses and limitations, is wrong, is morally wrong. It's criminal, by the way, and we just accept it, and we are trained to adapt to it, to conform, and most of us, that's how we live our lives, all our lives. And the survival of the fittest and basically social Darwinism are wrong, because in reality the survival of the fittest is not exactly what it is true to a certain extent, and that if we take the fittest, the concept of fit as the ability to adapt to a system where most of us don't have any saying, we just are required to adapt, which therefore all our education is basically a process to shape us, to condition our behavior and our inner reality, which means to have an effect, a subconscious effect that transforms us, that makes us able to adapt to a reality, to a culture that where this type of fit, the survival of the fittest makes sense, not because the ones that do survive are the fit. They are not the fittest. Usually they are the meanest, which is not favorable to a social species that evolved and survived based on the social skills, on the ability to protect the collective in order to protect the individual. And there is no, it would not be possible, and it still not be possible, to the survival of the so-called fittest to survive alone, or to prosper alone, or to develop any skills alone. Because all the skills we can develop, scientific, technological, or any other skills, are always social skills. They require a social environment. They require shared knowledge and shared experience. Therefore, it is just a myth to believe that the survival of the fittest happens out of thin air. We cannot ignore the nature the social nature and condition of the human species, because that is exactly what explains our survival. Doesn't matter how smart we are. Our survival is basically determined by our sociability, but by us being social beings that depend on each other to survive. Because we do not learn alone. We do not prosper alone. What we are, what we believe we are, our identity is always a social identity. It's always a collective, part of a collective process, not this idea of self-interested individualism. It is to justify a system, is not to explain who we are, and that is a problem, because it justifies the unjustifiable, which, for example, is the exploitation of human weaknesses and limitations. Instead of doing the opposite. Most of the disorders that we can find in the DSM-5 are caused by social, have social roots. They have nothing to do with chemical imbalances, and that's why there is the wrong approach. There is a lot of science, I mean pseudoscience, that is dedicated to a single purpose: to put the blame on us as individual human beings, and to justify a system that is dysfunctional, that dehumanizes us, and that destroys our humanity, because it doesn't see us as relational, because it sees us as individuals, separated, fighting, competing with each other. And these are supposed to be to have science behind it. This is no science. there is fake biological and physiological and psychological understanding of the human being. Because if we try to justify a system that is based on the separation of human beings and putting human beings in shelves and drawers, of course, that we are going to make people sick, mentally sick, emotionally sick, because it's very difficult to build bonds, relational bonds with other people when people cannot trust each other. When the human relations become commodified. When basically everything is a legal contract. There is no a social relation doesn't require social relations, and even many economic relations should not demand a legal contract, a legal protection, because that legal protection is not to protect the ones that need it, is to protect the few that want to keep us in a state of dependence. The existing cultures, and this is not only a Western phenomena, it is a worldwide, it's a global phenomena, is to justify a societal, economic and political system that is profoundly unfair, unjust, and that dehumanizes us. And by individualizing, by atomizing and exploiting, as I said, the weaknesses and limitations and flaws that we all have. It doesn't matter who you are, how smart you are. We become instruments, cogs, to play roles and perform functions. And always we need to ask, cui bono? Why can't we have lives that are much more meaningful and with that than the ones we have? Why do we need to be all the time competing with each other and trying to win arguments? And why is that? Can we explain that just because it's how we are built, that we cannot behave in other ways? Of course we can. But everything we are taught is to become like that. It's to become individualistic. It's to think about, it's to think as a homo economicus. Not as part of a society, not as social beings that understand life as relational, but as just an opportunity, as opportunities to profit, to gain, to accumulate, to subjugate, to exploit, to use. and finally to throw away, to dump. Because in the end, even those in higher roles are disposable if they become inconvenient, if they become an obstacle. And this is the kind of system we have: a sick, dysfunctional societal system that of course requires a culture that a culture and a moral code that glorifies it. That's exactly what we have. It is very convenient for the people and organizations and institutions, corporations and rich families and whoever at the top of the social pyramid that we all believe in these myths, you know, that because all, I mean, how we perceive ourselves, the world, the way we relate to each other, doesn't, it is framed, it comes from somewhere. It is not, it doesn't fall from the sky. It has nothing to do with free choice, that we are free to choose how we perceive everything. No. There is a lot of manipulation and the influence and training and indoctrination behind it. But we don't see it because when we achieve adult age or our late teens, even in spite of if you have a tendency to be rebels, it doesn't mean that we understand the roots, the causes of the sickness, of the rot. Of course we have explanations, but again, many times we just take justifications as explanations, even to understand the problems and to identify the roots of them. Not all the time we get accurate explanations, and therefore it's very difficult when we do not have a good diagnosis to identify the sickness, its causes, and what kind of treatment, what kind of strategy to build a healthy, creative, and humanized society, which also, of course, that has to be reflected in the culture. Because again, everything is interrelated, interconnected. If we want to have a healthy culture and a healthy society, we need to have a healthy and just economic system and political system. This is not about playing with words like we do, freedom and democracy and the free world versus the rest, you know. No, that's not reality. That is again using framing, ideological, cultural, political framing, in order to manipulate our perception. It's perception manipulation to manufacture consent. We have an economic system, a political system, and institutions like a banking system, a financial system, an international law system, or international, the so-called, that's not often used these days, but it used to be one of the most important. It was used by Blinken, Tony Blinken, and others all the time. The so-called rules-based international order. Nothing of this order, domestic and international order, is to protect us, is to make us more resilient. It is just to serve the people at the top. And this needs to be acknowledged. This is nothing. This is not a question of political, it's of left or right political awareness. It is a question. It is a cultural awareness. This requires to be that we allow ourselves to not be limited also by cultural taboos, which can limit our understanding of the social, economic, and political reality. That's the purpose of them. Because we limit our understanding, and that is for sure that doesn't benefit us, because this is part of the web of deception or deceit that our cultural system is. I mean, that makes most of us live in denial. We don't even want to understand where the problems come from, because it's exactly the point. That's what we are supposed to do. It's much better that we live in denial, or we just blame the wrong people, or by scapegoating and by buying into demonization and humanization, instead of understanding where the roots of the problems. Understanding the roots of the problems would probably could show us, demonstrate that social division and cultural division and class warfare and so much of the delusion that is part of our lives is manufactured, is done with a purpose. It's not natural, it's not random, it is fabricated with the purpose of controlling us. That is the reality. That we are supposed, we can and we are allowed to choose, to pick roles and functions. And the earlier we do it, the probabilities and the hypothesis to be successful, to serve the system, to be the fittest, to become the fittest. That means that we can have a role. We can have you can have a function in a higher position. Therefore, we'll be rewarded for that. So there will be success, economic, professional success. That will make me feel you fulfillment, that you achieved something in life. But that achievement doesn't mean that you have been denying yourself the possibility of being yourself. You know what I mean? Because then you just perform a function. If you do not want to do, if you for some reason find out that it's not, that the system is rotten, and then you start not to comply with what is expected from you, you will then find out the nature of this system, the corrupted, perfid nature of this system. That's not about making us free in the true sense that we understand freedom as a relational process, but as a process that at the same time frees us by freeing others. Because it's not about controlling and exploiting. It's not about thinking in inferior and superior, in the ones that deserve, the losers and winners. It's about a web of relations. It is about that all of us are here. I'm not the kind of person that thinks about the purpose of a long-term purpose, afterlife purpose, but with the purpose to live with dignity. And that is true for us and for the rest of the living community and the planet Earth itself. And the culture, the dominant culture, is about exploitation, control. It's not about a culture that is developed, that has its premises in fitting in the web of nature, in the web of life. But is to control that web of life, is to divide, to exploit, to transform, but for control, for wealth accumulation, for private and individual glory. You know, to fulfill delusions of grandeur, megalomaniac projects, like trying to propagate an ego, their egos into the eternity, to make them through buildings and projects that project their names, their egos into perpetuity. This culture is dehumanizing us. This culture is not based in sound science. It is based in myths, and it's supposed to make us believe in fictitious narratives about the condition, about the human nature and condition. Because it is for the purpose of justifying a certain system, a specific system, and the civilization and the specific paradigm of civilization, which is global. I'm not talking about any particular civilization. I'm talking about the imperialistic, megalomaniac civilizational paradigms that you can find everywhere you go. You don't, and then you have all the, you have a lot of, and all of these civilizations are glorified. All these kings and emperors are glorified. The question, I mean, the issue is not that all of them, if they are good or bad. It is that it is not how it is that we should understand that we are not our fate. This is not a natural fate. This is not an innate fate. This can be our fate. The fate of humanity can be different, and we can have a far more humanized society, a complex society as the ones we have today, with a different economic, political and cultural systems. They have to acknowledge that we need a holistic system. We need a political economy, a social and ecological political economy. But we cannot achieve it or even fight to build it while we keep a system. While we have an understanding of ourselves through a cultural system that that exploits our weaknesses and limitations. This is the problem, that we accept it. We accept the existence of institutions, organizations, and corporations that grow and prosper out of exploiting ourselves, and we can see that there's something wrong with it, but at the same time we accept it. We do not see we do not see any other way. We have that's the biggest limitation, that we are not able to overcome that limitation. Because freedom of thought and critical analysis, especially when it comes to be comprehensive, to go to the bottom, it doesn't come free. It needs to be trained. It requires knowledge. It requires consistency and conscious processing. Otherwise, we are not able to open our vision and to go deep into analyzing the reality where we live. That's why for most of us we operate, we just function, we adapt, we try to survive, we try to thrive, we try to be as happy as we can be, we try to provide for our families. So we try to bypass the problems, bypass or bypass them if we can, or somehow navigate them, the rules that are against us, that work against us, that we can perceive it, that some rules are against are playing against us. But since we cannot remove them, we try to navigate them. So, and we assume that we can maybe try some reforms through political participation, but our political participation is mainly by going to the voting booth. Most of the time, instead of making things better, we make it worse. Because if the roots of the problems, and by the way, that's the reason why I don't see the right-wing movements and political parties, the far-right, nationalistic and populist far-right, and even fascistic far-right, they are not providing a solution. They are not by any means addressing the roots of the problems, okay? And that's why they do not want system change. They want to weaponize. What they are doing is to weaponize and instrumentalize existing problems, real ones or perceived ones, and by doing that, they are convincing many of us that they have the solutions, and they look radical, and they look that they are fighting, and they picture themselves as the ones that are fighting the system, that are going to solve the problems of immigration, of corruption, of this and of that, of the cultural wokeness, that many people feel disgusted about it. I understand it. But that's the problem. They are not really addressing the systemic problems, which means they are not addressing the roots that are causing the growth, that are causing the problems they mention, they use, like immigration, like cultural wokeness, like corruption, nepotism, clientelism. These problems are already sicknesses that are originated by those roots which they do, some of them they will deny, and they omit intentionally because they don't want to change the system. They don't want to address the systemic roots of the problems, which of course are political, economic, cultural. Though that is why, for those who believe that nationalistic, populist, far-right parties are the solution. They are not. They do not understand how. They do not understand the nature and the roots of the problems. Because what we need is a different approach, is different lenses, is to read, is to analyze reality, our cultural reality, where our perception, where does our perceptions come from, our assumptions, our convictions come from, and why do we perceive the problems the way we do. That's what needs to be, that's what requires a critical analysis for a conscious transformational process that slowly will allow us to see reality as it is, not the reality that conforms with our preferences, our ideological or political preferences or cultural preferences, or any form of feeling good solutions, which we all know that they are also pretty exploited in order to keep us entertained, because that's exactly the issue. One of the shallowness of our culture is also intentional. It has the purpose of keeping us entertained, not the purpose of freeing us from manipulation, to keeping us entertained, and also to keeping us delusional. It's about delusional entertaining that makes it much more difficult for us to focus ourselves in teaching, in learning how to build a conscious critical analysis of the reality. So this is exactly how it works, how this reality works, how our culture of exploiting human weaknesses and limitations to control, for social control, and that they are unacceptable, but they are described and presented and transformed into economic reality and legal reality and political and cultural reality that makes them, that normalizes and naturalizes them, which makes it much more difficult for us to see that they are dysfunctional. They are not based in sound science, social science, or even natural science. So that's why we live in this maze, this huge maze of deception, this web of deceit that is very difficult, that we don't even try to find a way out. That's what most of us do. We don't even think about that. Most of us don't, or many of us at least, don't even think that okay, we do live in this, we are imprisoned in this web of deceit. This is a huge maze with many levels and dimensions, and we don't even try. We just don't even try to find our way out of this. Yes, we don't. We are born and we die into it. We can call it Matrix. We can call it whatever you want. And then, but this is not my point, and my fight is this is not the way to live. This is not a dignifying way to live. If we care about human dignity and the dignity of life itself, and if we care about the web of life, and nature and holism and building holistic relations, building understanding, comprehensive understanding, and a holistic understanding of life and nature, and also our role in the cosmos, we need to understand that this system dehumanizes us, does not help us to build freedom, the freedom we need to become free, but becoming free through as relational beings, not through, but as relational beings. That's what we are, and that's how we need to understand ourselves. The genuine purpose of life is not performing or acting. It is to feel, to understand life, to feel as human, as living beings, as relational living beings that are interdependent, that live in interdependence with each other in the web of life, the web of nature. That's why culture needs to be part of the web of nature, not culture versus nature. We are not supposed to play. We can play roles and you can have functions, but that's not what life itself is. Not about playing roles or fulfilling functions, because therefore we are limiting the understanding of ourselves as relational beings. We frame ourselves and we perceive ourselves just as achievers, as people, individuals pursuing the self-interest, as individuals pursuing success, as homo economicus, as professionals, as academics, as part of the professional managerial class, as part of an elite, academical, political, financial, economic, as a plutocrat or as an oligarch. And then these people in these higher positions, they feel themselves, they perceive themselves as of some sort of different tribe, of different, they're not the same as the rest of us. That's why they are authorities, they are leaders, you know. They are the ones that are supposed to dictate the governance, to control our lives, to write the rules, the laws, the norms, the narratives that are supposed to give meaning and purpose to our lives. Because we are too stupid to find it out by ourselves or build it ourselves. And this is why it is, this is a fight that we need to be aware. This is something that we should become aware and train ourselves. But I do not see it being done. Because the web of deceit, you know, the maze where we live, or the matrix, most people, as I said, don't even think that it exists, much less they think of finding a way out. Therefore, their minds are trapped, are colonized. And what they believe, it's freedom. It's not freedom. It's conditioning. It's psychological, behavioral, cultural, ideological, and political conditioning by the ones that we are supposed to perceive as saviors, heroes, leaders, authorities, but that in fact the purpose of all of that is to keep us under control, to keep us blind, to exploit blind faith. That is why any political solution needs to be based in a wider, comprehensive understanding of the cultural, economic, political, and ideological frames. And how the world is framing, how the reality is framed. Otherwise, the political solutions that we frequently are perceive as available to us are not solutions, because they do not address the systemic problems. They do not go to the roots of the problems. And either we want systemic change or we want reforms. And the reforms that we can expect, they do not bring change. Any meaningful change. Cultural, economic, societal, and political. It might make our lives worse. Because austerity and manufactured scarcity are political tools. They are not economic solutions. And most of the talk about the economic problems, it is about manipulation. It's about manipulation, political and ideological manipulation. It's not about that how to address the problems, because again, we are most of most of the economists don't even understand the economy, because they themselves were taught to perceive reality in ways that do not match reality. And of course, they are also self-interested. Careerists, they have their own biases for sure, but they also have their economic interests. And they are, they want to be recognized as something that actually they are not. They are performers again. It's about performing. They are acting. And we live in this world of people, it's basically about acting, not being. That is why, without an holistic understanding, we cannot, a comprehensive understanding of the reality where we live, we are always led to do wrong, to a dead end. And that's where we are. And we should deal with it. That's what I believe. Okay, this is going to be it for today. Thanks for listening. I will be back soon.